Hello, BookTube. Well, I come to you victorious. my spear held high. I just this morning finished King Forkbeard saga, the book that I was writing for NaNoWriMo 2018. I reached 50,000 words. I hammered at it steadily all throughout the month of November, even when there were days when I really didn't want to, when I really had a pile of other stuff to do. So this was a classic NaNoWriMo for me, because that is the challenge that everybody faces in NaNoWriMo. There's always other things to do. That's the whole philosophy of NaNoWriMo, is that you're always going to have lots of other things to do. There is never going to be a time where you wake up and say, you know, today is the perfect day to start my novel or to work on my novel. There's never going to be a perfect time for that. The whole philosophy of NaNoWriMo is to make the time and get it done anyway. And hurdle through. Set yourself a writing goal every day and hit that goal every day without excuses. Not worrying about editing. Not worrying about long-term planning. Not worrying about shaping the ultimate end of the narrative. Instead, generate 50,000 words. So that at the end of November, where we are right now, you can look back and say, I wrote 50,000 words. And it's semi-coherent. It is, as a first draft, I can work with it. I have been writing fiction, dashing off fiction and whatnot, and nonfiction. I've been writing English prose for a very, very long time. So all of King Forkbeard saga is readable. You can read it in its present form from start to finish. I didn't ever need any plot bunnies or anything like that. I didn't ever have to twist the thing by introducing a zombie or a vampire. I knew what I wanted to do from beginning to end, and that was to tell the saga, to tell the story of the real life King of England, whose nickname, he was a Viking, and his nickname was Forkbeard. And he ruled England for very little time. He didn't even live long enough to be crowned. But he did achieve it. It is real. If you look, it's not commonly known, but if you look at the long roll of British kings, people who actually did become King of England, he's one of them. He's not nearly as famous as his successor, and he's not as famous as some of his predecessors, and he didn't stick around long enough. He had a fantastically adventurous life, and it was tremendous fun to write a fictional version of that life, and to elaborate on it as need be. And of course I did, because I liberally stirred in fantasy elements to King Forkbeard saga, because as you can tell from the title, one of the things I wanted to do was to write, inspired a little by the new George R. R. Martin, I wanted to write it a little as an Icelandic saga. Now, doing that, adapting to just an alien way of writing, an alien sensibility, crafting an homage like that, takes work. You might think not. You might think if you've got the sagas right in front of you that all you have to do is imitate them, but actually writing alien to your own register takes work. And so, when I was writing King Forkbeard saga for NaNoWriMo, there were days when all I had the mental energy or the time for was to just write my 1,700 words straight up. Just straight up. Like, there's an assassination attempt. I made my 1,700 words. Each 1,700 word day was a chapter. So there's a chapter where there's an assassination attempt. There's a chapter where there's a poisoning attempt. There's a chapter where King Forkbeard gets lucky. There are all sorts of chapters where he becomes fascinated by reading, and where he meets people who are not. He himself has been warlike forever, literally his whole life since he was a child. And there are chapters later on, once he starts to feel that he has his feet underneath him, once he starts to feel that he has something like a power base, he starts to become more secure in meeting people who have never fought, people who are completely different from him. They used to anger him or bore him. And once he feels secure later on in life, he starts to become fascinated by them and talk to them. And there were chapters like that. And some of all of those kinds of chapters, I would just get to them at 10 o'clock that night or 5 o'clock that afternoon or whatever. And I would think, you know, I want to cast this as an Icelandic saga. I want to write it that way. But really, I am just not up to it. So today, I'm just going to write it straight. Just like a normal historical novel. There were plenty of times where I did that. There were also plenty of times where I didn't. There were plenty of times where I managed to stick to my original conceit. And if I were, that's the whole point of NaNoWriMo, is you don't worry about it. Just write. Just write. In the back of my mind, I kept thinking, well, you know, if I revisit this, if, for instance, I wanted to use this as a draft for a novel, well, then I'd have my work cut out for me, because some of it is cast as an Icelandic saga, but I want all of it to be. So I would need to go back and recast the parts that aren't. I would need to make it the presentation of it smooth. I didn't worry about it because you're not supposed to worry in NaNoWriMo. You're just supposed to write. Just don't come up with any excuses. Don't edit yourself. Don't stop. Just keep going. And I did. Feels great. I don't really know how to get a verification badge from NaNoWriMo. The descriptions that I've had of what you have to do, I deeply don't trust. I don't know if that's just me. But it looks to, I could be understanding it wrong, but it looks to me like in order to get a verification badge from NaNoWriMo, I have to give my novel to them. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that at all. But one way or another, I finished and it felt great. I wrapped it up with, as usual with me, the concluding scene was the one that I knew first. It was the thing that came to me first. Forkbeard, King Forkbeard lived at a time, right at the time when Christianity and ancient Norse mythology beliefs were starting into a pitched battle that would end with Christianity's complete victory. And I knew at the beginning of this little story that I wanted to end it. King Forkbeard dies unexpectedly, and most unexpectedly, he doesn't die in battle. He just dies abruptly. I myself say that it was a massive aneurysm. And I wanted my final scene to be him having a choice between the Christian afterlife and the Norse afterlife. And of course, he has learned late in life as King of England, for a few weeks anyway, to be more judicious, to sit and listen, not to be quite so impulsive. So he hears descriptions. He gets, after he's dead, he hears descriptions of each afterlife and immediately chooses Valhalla. Once he's done hearing all the evidence, he immediately chooses an afterlife in which he's fighting and having his guts ripped out and then, healing and sitting down to eat and drink all night long with the people he was just fighting with, and then the next morning you get up, you're hungover, you get dressed, and you start fighting again for the thrill. So you get the thrill of battle all day long, and then you get the thrill of merrymaking and carousing at the end of a stressful, hard day. That was the Norse afterlife, where you just do that forever. And he decides to do that. That's the end of King Forkbeard saga. And it was tremendous fun. And I wanted to make this video just to commemorate because NaNoWriMo is over. I wanted to make an AuthorTube video and commemorate because the event is over now. This is the last day you have to make your word count. But also for two things. One, to ask you, in the comments field, please let me know how, if you did NaNoWriMo, how did you fare? And what did you think of it? Especially if it was your first one. But the second thing is also, I know this is pointless because NaNoWriMo has this big organizational cachet to it, but the second thing I wanted to do was to urge you to remember that you don't need NaNoWriMo to keep doing this. You could keep doing this. There will never be an ideal time to write the book that is nagging at you to get it written, and you're the only one who can do that. So maybe consider, I always tell this in one way or another, I think I've said it in videos, I always say it to people that I'm emailing with, the email buddies of mine. I always say this, I don't know if it's hopeless, but I want to do it anyway. I want to stress that you can keep doing this. You can keep it up. It's a great feeling. And the more you do of it, the greater it gets. So that's, I want to ask you how you did in NaNoWriMo. I'll tell you how I did in NaNoWriMo. I also want to urge you to keep writing. Keep going. Because, it might not appear that way. It might not be foremost in your mind in the concentration of NaNoWriMo, which is mainly just to get it all down. Get it out of your system. Don't edit it. Don't worry whether it's good or bad. Many writing coaches for NaNoWriMo will tell you it isn't good. Don't worry that it's whether or not it's good because it's not. You're dashing it off. So of course it's not good. The point is to have it out there, material that you can work on. Even though that is the institutional urging of NaNoWriMo, I still want to stress that the novel that is urging you to write it, you're the only one who can write that novel. You could tell every single detail of the novel that is in your head, the thing you imagine. You could tell every detail of it to your best friend, the person who knows you best. And if they started to write it, it would be different than the one in your head. You're the only one who can free that work. So you should. You should. You should get it out there. So I want to wrap up my NaNoWriMo for this month by urging you all to keep writing. Don't view the end of NaNoWriMo as a vacation from writing. Keep it up. Keep going. Maybe start a new project for December, or maybe take December to jot down lots of notes, do lots of planning and plotting, and then write all through January. Start in January and write a book in 2019. And maybe finish it up for NaNoWriMo next year so that you need that boost, that communal boost, one way or another. I'm done, and I have a writing project for December that I will now embrace. I have two, in fact, because I'd like to get a jump on January if I can. But anyway, that just a NaNoWriMo update for any of you who may be interested. And then I'll wrap this up, but we have plenty more to talk about, so I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.